This is Rob Kilmer. At 10:30 yesterday morning, a bloody massacre erupted at the Civic Association. But what happened after that is what we will be talking about today on You Defend It. Welcome to You Defend It with Rob Kilmer. The phone number to call into the show is 772-1290. My website is www.youdefendit.com. That's youdefendit.com. You can give me your comments on the show anytime. By Friday of each week, the next week's topic will be up. You can also visit my blog through the site. You can read my posts and leave your own. The lineup for the Sunday talk shows will also be posted there on Saturdays. You can also listen to my show live on streaming audio on www.wmbf.com. And my show is uploaded after it plays later on Saturdays. You can listen to it from there if you missed it live. Callers and guests to my show, as always, will need to take a position, be able to defend it with an argument that is factual, not emotional. And if you can't make your point without insulting someone, you can't make your point on this show. Callers and guests will be treated with complete respect. For my part, I will ask questions that matter and give people the opportunity to answer. All right. Obviously, what happened yesterday was unique in the history of Binghamton. That much we know. We don't know much else. As I was getting ready to go on a couple minutes ago, there was a reference to the shooter possibly being motivated by the fact that he didn't speak English very well, and he was frustrated by that, and for some reason or other, that led to what happened yesterday. That is some information that came in. I believe it came from Police Chief Zikuski, who is, by the way, the only person who I have watched that I felt has any credibility so far. Today I want to talk about what happened after. What happened after the police secured that building and the dead were taken out, the wounded taken to hospitals. That's when in my view, the victimization of Binghamton started all over again. I will tell you this. Any of you who have listened to this show know that what really motivated me to get this on the air was what happened with Don Imus. If that had not happened, if that had not motivated me to get this show on the air, yesterday would have. Within hours, cable was at full tilt. Cable was in the passing lane with its theories on what we could learn from yesterday, from what happened in my town. My town. What Binghamton needed yesterday afternoon, what the community needed, was a little room, was some time to collect itself and try and come to grips with what had just happened. What Binghamton got was what this show has railed against from day one, which is people trying to make a name for themselves without having a single fact to back themselves up, without caring, without wanting one, without needing one, to go forward and talk as if they knew what had happened, and to exploit what had happened yesterday to support their theories, their philosophies on things. I will read briefly. This is from Fox News. This was on their website at 5:17 yesterday. Somebody named John Lott Jr., who's a senior research scientist at the University of Maryland and author of, if I pronounce this correctly, Freedomnomics. Time after time, victim public shootings occur in gun-free zones, public places where citizens are not legally able to carry guns. The horrible attack today in Binghamton is no different. Every multiple victim public schools or public shooting that I have studied, where more than 3 people have been killed, has taken place where guns are banned. You would think that it would be an important part of the news stories for a simple reason. Gun-free zones are a magnet for these attacks. That's all I'm going to read from that article. I don't know. I don't know if this person chose the Civic Association because it was gun-free zone. I think he chose it because he was mad. That's as much as I know, or I think I know. If you think this one through, the police were there within a minute of getting the call. A minute. This wasn't about a gun-free zone, for God's sakes. This had nothing to do with that. Who was supposed to have guns there? The people who were not yet citizens? Who was killed yesterday? People seeking citizenship. I would be interested to hear if Fox News supports the notion that non-citizens should carry guns. It doesn't take long to take this theory and turn it into something absurd, because it is. Those people were not killed because they were located within a gun-free zone. He was known there. He knew the place. He'd been there before. He didn't choose it because of a local statute. Glenn Beck's show yesterday. And if I sound restrained today, it's because I'm afraid that if I get going, I'm going to be, well, I've prided myself on this show as trying to remain somewhat disciplined and restrained. Yesterday was hard. I turned off the TV. I turned off the TV in Binghamton so that I wouldn't hear any more information about a shooting involving what had now turned into 14 fatalities in Binghamton. That's how disgusted I was with everything I was hearing. There were literally reporters pulling people off the streets who were walking by because they thought that person may have seen something. You know, this Chief Zikuski, who I have never met, but I'll tell you what, I feel better. I'll sleep better at night knowing he's running it. Guy spent part of his press conference defending having taken people out of there in handcuffs. And that's because earlier in the day there had been reports, I put that word in quotes, that at least 2 possible suspects had been removed from that building. Well, if they weren't suspects, then why were they taken out in handcuffs? Incredible questions that he's defending himself against. And why? Because people had been described by everybody other than the police as suspects on CNN, on Fox, on everywhere. The biggest problem I have with the way media treats issues is momentum. Once something starts, you can't stop it. So you are responsible at the outset for how the conversation starts. My naive belief is that you can't start it without information. What would you learn from a book with no words? Nothing. Yet, by 5 o'clock yesterday, people who had no information whatsoever on what truly motivated this man or what had actually happened. They were telling us, can you imagine the audacity it takes to take what happened yesterday and by 5 o'clock say it's because it was a gun-free zone? To literally write these words: the horrible attack today in Binghamton is no different. No different than what? No different than every other killing that involved X number of people? No different? I say it is different. Each one of these incidents is different. The Glenn Beck show, yesterday had some psychiatrist on. And Glenn Beck talked about, he was talking American to American. This was consistent with his theme of disenfranchisement. What is that supposed to mean? Who's disenfranchised in this scenario? Who? Immigrants? Non-immigrants? Who? Who are the new victims? Other than people in this area as a whole, other than people like me who've lived here their entire lives. Yesterday for Binghamton was our day of infamy. And then cable piled on, using us to support their theories, using us to advance their agenda. Chief Sikorsky said, I don't know when he said it, I heard it this morning. By the way, I don't know if I'll get to a commercial break between now and 8:30. And at 8:30, I am going to have, where Paul Harvey used to be, I'm going to have Kathy White just give some information out that might be helpful to people who are affected by yesterday's events. Chief Sikorsky said that it may have had something to do, he was the model of restraint yesterday, by the way, may have had something to do with his frustration, the shooter's frustration over treatment he was receiving because he didn't speak English very well. Well, all I heard yesterday afternoon was that he had been laid off from IBM. Now, Glenn Beck's show, again, under the general theory of disenfranchisement, which, by the way, when you're disenfranchised, when you decide that you are, you license yourself to do things. Every time I hear Glenn Beck, I feel like he is subliminally telling me that armed insurrection is the way to go. Take on these nameless, faceless victimizers out there in your government, in your media. You are not alone, he says. Against what? So his expert says we're reaching a flashpoint. A flashpoint. Binghamton is proof that we are reaching a flashpoint in this society. And it is a result of not knowing how to deal with new stressors. Apparently that means the economy. I don't know. He said it's a whole new game. It's a bomb we need to defuse. A bomb. Nora O'Donnell yesterday suggested it might be anti-immigrant sentiment. She said that at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Nobody has any idea what happened. The most responsible things I heard yesterday were Chief Zukoski saying it wouldn't be fair to the shooter. Now this is the police chief. He's not exactly a left-wing bleeding heart liberal. It wouldn't be fair to the person we have identified as the likely shooter to call him the shooter until we are certain. And since everybody in the one room, I believe, was dead, including the shooter, it would not be hard, it would not be unfathomable for the real shooter to have left ammunition or whatever else on somebody he had already killed and somehow get out of that building. It is extremely unlikely. And, 99% chance that they know who the shooter is. But the police chief was showing some restraint on that and cautioning in line with reality that they just needed to button a few things down. Where have you heard that? Where else have you heard that? Nowhere. We already know who the shooter is. On the media. On the national news, the shooter has been identified as, who was recently laid off from IBM. Well, you know what that means. The economic stress was too much, so he decided to kill people in a gun-free zone. Kelly is on the phone from Endicott. Kelly, can you hear me?
Yes.
Welcome to the show.
Morning. I'd just like to add that, first of all, the tragedy that's going on right now, it's not just immigrants were killed. There was receptionists and so forth. There was other people killed as well.
That's right.
The other thing I'd like to add is I know you're talking mostly about how people, especially the national news medias were starting to tote, gun-free zone and this kind of thing, and if people had been armed, maybe something could have been done. Well, there was just as many news stories talking about we need more gun control. Let's take away guns to everybody because this is a danger.
Right.
And take away that story's never going to work because the reality is law-abiding people who are following the Constitution and able to have weapons at home for their own protection are never going to be doing this kind of stuff. You're never going to be able to take even if you had a gun law, you're not going to be able to take guns out of the hands of criminals who want to use them against other people.
Right, and the bigger point that I'm making about yesterday is the argument that gun-free zones caused this, or the argument that this is really evidence of the need for gun control, is ridiculous on this incident. This incident doesn't prove anything.
Well, I'd like to add to that. Don't think that guy didn't walk in there knowing that nobody was going to be packing what he was carrying. He certainly wouldn't have walked into an NRA meeting carrying what he was carrying. He knew that nobody was going to be in there armed and ready for him as well. So certainly any criminal who's planning any kind of attack or any criminal activity certainly knows what they're walking into and when they're planning it. That's part of the pre-planning process. and he certainly knew nobody was going to be in there of any danger to him or have any weapons against what he had. So to say that, part of that is true. I don't believe that especially in schools or things like that, and I'm former military, that everybody should be walking around, holding a concealed weapon. But, especially now with, Columbine, all these things going on, yeah, I think it is absolutely an excellent idea for maybe a principal to have a couple weapons locked in, that nobody would know about, that are locked under safe and key, that he has to have training for and so forth. So if there is a danger to his students or his staff, somebody can go there in an absolute emergency and take action and defend the innocent. And right now it's all about, no, we can't have guns, that's dangerous. Well, the only people that are dangerous are the criminals that are bringing them in, and the innocent people have nothing.
Okay.
And so, yeah, maybe if they had a safe there somewhere, maybe in the basement, that one staff member or two staff members that were directors or something had access to, not that anybody wants to take a weapon against anybody, but when somebody's coming down and mowing down people and mowing down your staff, don't think that there were several people yesterday wishing they had something to use.
Okay. Well, thanks for the call.
Thank you.
My point about yesterday is that from what is known right now about yesterday, it doesn't support anybody's theory about anything. That's my point. I can't think of a person in that building yesterday, from the people who I've heard were either working there or attending classes there, which is, by the way, morphed into taking the test for citizenship. They were this close. I don't know if they were taking a test for citizenship. I have no idea. That hasn't been confirmed. They were there. The point I'm trying to make here is that by the time people are out there yesterday using this despicable tragedy to support their theories on guns, on the economy, on it, nobody knew anything. And they don't now. I think I have Kay on the line, or do I have Lucas?
Well, I'm Lucas. Are you talking to me?
Yes, I am.
Okay, well, you do have a point. I mean, every one of these shootings do have things, and saying something is a gun-free zone and all that isn't necessarily the case. Take Columbine, for example. At Columbine, you had an armed sheriff's deputy on the school property. So, in other words, you can't say, well, if someone was armed, and let's say Binghamton High School, you've got armed policemen patrolling Binghamton High School.
Right.
That was basically a block away from the shooting. And not only that, on the same block, you have armed security guards at social services.
That's right. And the police were there within a minute yesterday.
Yeah.
And it would be ridiculous to think that you would shoot 10 or 12 people and the police weren't going to show up eventually. So this notion that you weren't going to encounter armed resistance.
Oh, yeah, that's I mean, there, like most of these shootings that have occurred, they do occur in places that are officially gun-free zones. And the thing is that even if you have an armed guard, if someone comes in with guns blazing, they can easily mow down a number of people before someone can draw a gun and fight back.
There were two guards at the Capitol in Washington shot dead a couple of years ago. Armed guards, guy walked up, they didn't see it coming.
Those two guards died.
Right. But my broader point is that, there's nothing to learn from this yet. And everybody's out there trying to exploit this for their own theory or for their own position. The facts don't support them. There aren't enough facts out there known to support anything at this point.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, we could be talking about this next week.
Right.
And we still won't be certain as to all the facts because...
But by next week, it won't be on CNN all day long. Yet it was a story yesterday because it happened yesterday, and Fox and MSNBC. And during that period of time, that's when the momentum for this story started. That's when everybody's going to draw what they wanted to draw from it, and that will become established fact. And we'll go from there, and that's my point. There were no facts known yesterday, none, from which anybody could conclude that their theory was supported, or that this means that, or the economy is driving people to do this. But by the time the facts roll out, and it's not as exciting a week from now, I mean, it's not even, I checked some of the websites today, it's not the number one story today, that the opportunity for restraint has passed, and we will be talking about this in the context of, how this could have been prevented, when we don't know. We have no idea. None. We had no idea yesterday. The people who are these people who were supposed to have guns yesterday at the Civic Association? People who are not yet citizens? The 60-plus-year-old woman behind the desk? Was she charged with preventing an armed man from coming in there? Was she to be prepared to do that? I just think it's so easy to take facts when people are emotional, when people are upset, when the nation's attention is, when people are riveted. That's the time to strike, and that's when people do, and it's completely irresponsible because there are no facts from which to draw a conclusion, yet I heard nothing but conclusions yesterday. I got to get on to one more call here.
Okay.
Thanks very much for calling in.
You're welcome. Bye.
Kay, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Welcome to the show.
Morning. I think this is a terrible tragedy, and I think that more churches should be involved and have silent prayers for their churches.
Okay. You want to add to that at all?
I just am in shock myself. I mean, I don't live that far from where it happened myself.
It would actually. Can you turn your radio off?
Can you turn it down, babe? Turn it down, babe. Turn it down.
This. I think this happened within a few feet of a church, didn't it?
I live on Clinton Street here.
Okay.
But it's not far from Murray Street.
What time did you become aware of it?
I heard about it about 10:30 when it was on the radio.
What did you do when you heard about it?
I called my girlfriend, told her about it. I called some places where I volunteer, told them about it.
Did you say things like, "I can't believe it," and "Is this really happening?"
I said, "Oh my God, no."
Right. Did you feel like later in the day, when this was over, when the building had been secured, didn't you feel like we were entitled in Binghamton to a little bit of a break?
Yeah, I felt, why didn't they have more police, patrolling that area before this ever happened?
That's not where I'm going. I mean, I don't know whether anybody could have prevented, somebody could walk in here. Somebody could walk in the giant market, but
somebody could walk in the hospital.
Right. And my point is, it seemed like by mid-afternoon or late afternoon, the media was up and running. The cable networks, they had their experts on, lined up out the door, what should have happened, how the people inside should have acted. They should have, one guy on one of the networks was saying, I know it sounds difficult, but you got to bum rush somebody with a gun like that. What are we doing? I mean, these things take seconds. If you've got an automatic weapon, if it's a semi-automatic pistol, whatever it is, two of them, I believe, killing 12 people, literally, it's a 30-second job.
But are they sure that he definitely worked for IBM?
I have no idea.
Did they find any proof that he did?
I don't know. But you'll be hearing that. You will hear him referred to as a laid-off IBM employee. That's what
they're saying right now.
Right. That's already and that's how it'll stay, whether he was or not. Yeah. That'll be in the public's mind forever because that supports the theory that the economy is making people do this.
I know.
And that's my point. That people are they're picking and choosing what facts they have not even confirmed and are using it to support their theory.
My question is, are they going to be able to have the garlic fest there, or are there going to be people afraid to go there because of what happened?
I don't know. My understanding is that place did good work, and I'm sure it'll continue to.
They sure did. It was a good place.
Well, thanks very much for the call.
Thank you.
Mike, you there?
Yes.
Welcome to the show.
Hey, one thing I'd like to point out is we still don't even know for sure if this guy is the guy
Right.
that did it. I mean, yeah, they found the satchel of ammunition around it, but somebody, I would have been smart enough, well, not to say I would do it, to say, hey, I'll take this thing of ammo, put it around that guy's neck, and I'll walk out with the rest of the people, and everybody might have been hiding and not even realized that I was there or wasn't there before, and right. Do you understand where I'm going with that?
Yeah, and in fact, of all people, to his credit, to his eternal credit, I tell you, I've practiced law around here for 15 years or so, and I do some criminal work, and I've never met Joe Zukuski. I've heard about him, but I've never met him. I wouldn't know him if I saw him till yesterday. He was incredible. He gave that press conference, and he was measured. He discussed what he knew, told you what he didn't know, and he said it would not be fair to this person to identify him conclusively as the shooter until we know for certain. There is going to be much more of an investigation on that. Implying the same thing that you're saying.
Yes.
That, can you imagine that kind of discipline and restraint and responsibility from the chief law enforcement officer in the city where there was a mass murder to say, I'm going to wait. I'm going to make sure I know who it is. Because
they'll find out for sure.
They'll find out, and if that's not the guy, then thank God we have a police chief who's willing to keep open the possibility, however slim, that there may be somebody else out there, and he's going after him.
Yep.
Well, thanks very much for the call.
And hey, can I just add one thing? Is
go ahead.
This thing about having more officers around probably I don't think would have made so much more of a difference. But like in other states where everybody is armed, maybe somebody would have stopped them. There might have been not the old lady at the front, but sometimes a lot of old women do shoot guns down in certain states that allow everybody to have a pistol permit. But somebody in the building may have had one, and the odds are somebody probably would have, and maybe not so much at the Civic Center where they're not even legal citizens yet, but if it was in any other place, like a hospital, a bank, somewhere else, this guy would have been nailed as soon as he walked in and shot the first person.
Well, we'll never know, I guess.
Yeah. All right, have a good day.
You too. Thanks for calling
Bye.
in. I'm going to have Kathy White come in here in just a couple minutes. I obviously shot right past 8:30. But the point I'm trying to make here is that right now, what happened yesterday does not support an argument for gun control, as some people will say. It does not support an argument for repeal of gun laws. We keep talking about how a shooter who's this smart would have done this or that. Somebody, if the gun laws changed, they'd know that, and they'd plan that accordingly. But the bottom line here is that it is impossible at this point to draw any conclusions about what happened yesterday when it's not known what happened yesterday. And it was certainly not possible yesterday to formulate theories. One of the networks yesterday showed the Binghamton, they had the backdrop of all the footage you saw of the shooting scene while two people were talking about the economy. Can you imagine anything so irresponsible in your life? When nobody knows, there have been conflicting reports in the last 24 hours as to why he did this. In fact, there wasn't even a report that he did this because he had been laid off. There was a report that he was laid off. Not that he had communicated to anyone that he felt that his economic situation had suddenly turned hopeless and Therefore, he was going to kill 12 people, 13 people, whatever. Today we hear that it may have something to do with his language skills and some frustration over that. There's no way to know, but the narrative started yesterday. That's my point. The narrative started yesterday. It's an unemployed, recently laid off person from IBM who went on a shooting rampage. What are we going to do about this economy? Another narrative is, if only we had the ability to protect ourselves. If only some of the people there were armed. When looking at it realistically, there's nobody there who could have been armed. Nor is there any proof. I mean, the receptionist, she was the first one shot. He walked in and shot her. It's either say hello or shoot her. He shot her. What's she going to do? Beat him to the draw? It just doesn't support it. This is a time where Binghamton should be entitled to a little bit of calm after what happened. Not wild speculation on no facts whatsoever. And I just feel like we were used all day yesterday for people's different theories. I don't know, it's too late now to undo it. But it is typical, and it is what this show is about. People who exploit other people's fears and their anger to get them to believe something. Changes in the gun laws would have prevented this. How do you feel now, Binghamton? Should have listened to me. If the economy were handled a different way, yesterday would never have happened. What does that mean? We need tax cuts? What does it mean? We need to spend less money? It has nothing to do with any of it. You know, it is extremely difficult to separate people from their emotions when it comes to issues that evoke fear in people. You know, a while back we had these sex offender laws, where they could live. 90% of sex offenses are committed by people who are known to the families, to the victim. That fact was irrelevant in the discussion. You'd have thought from the discussion locally about passing these laws that there were monsters hiding in the bushes on every street corner, waiting for your child to walk by. Nobody could really cite a case where that had happened, but laws were passed. You convince a country to go to war on images of mushroom clouds, they'll go. You got to be careful with what you say when it comes to playing on people's fears. But that's not what we have right now, and it's not people who are really susceptible to that advice. They don't want to be careful with your fears. They see that as a golden opportunity. That's what happened yesterday. Glenn Beck at one point said, "Why are we covering this?" He had to ask himself out loud, why are we covering this at all? What does this really tell us about us? I thought, wow. Man, that guy makes a little sense. Then he said, but I have some questions. And then he simultaneously told us that he was going to spend the next 3-4 hours, whatever, however long he's on. Then he had his experts on, then he had his psychiatrist on, and then he talked about how he talked about this incident in the context of disenfranchisement. And his guest said we're reaching a flashpoint. You know, personalities on the news exploiting tragedies of others to advance their agenda. And it was different yesterday because it was here. Yesterday started out normal, I guess. If you lived in Binghamton, it had a September 11th feel to it about noon. But I was just appalled as the day went on with the rampant speculation without any known facts whatsoever. That this tragedy means we should do this. This tragedy means we should do that. At a time when the facts of the tragedy itself are not known. How do you do that? Where's your self-respect? Where's your compassion? Where's the decency? Leave Binghamton alone. We've been through enough today. That's how I felt about 3 o'clock. We've had enough today. Today was a bad day in Binghamton. Don't make it worse by using us now for your theories. We're not here to help you today. Ron is on the line from Dickinson. Can you hear me?
Yes, Rob. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I might have 3 quick comments, but one more of a little comparison and discussion. I'll start with that first. And one of the areas that I'm thinking is security. There are at least 2 very small businesses in the area that possibly don't employ more than 4 or 5 people in the form of a little store and a used furniture place. And they have security cameras in quite a few directions. My concern is that car that was put up against the door at the back of the building could have been spotted by a security camera. One reason to have possibly security in that area is the gathering. You know, there were possibilities of possibly using drugs and so on in that parking lot. I think that should be, a concern, mainly because from my past experience when I was working, I know that I would look at the United Fund contributions in the area, and the American Civic Association got, I think, considerable amount of funds to run their organization. The other point is I would like to know if that person had a valid permit for those handguns. There are stories, and I experienced a horrendous situation trying to get a pistol permit in Broome County. And the other comment I have is I wonder if the person, this murderer who did this, if he had lived, I wonder if he would have been charged with a hate crime versus if it had been a Caucasian person.
If the shooter had been a Caucasian person?
Yeah, if he hadn't been Asian and he had lived, if he was white, if he had lived, I wonder if he would be charged with a hate crime.
I don't know. Thanks for the call.
You're welcome.
I don't know where he's going with that. He wasn't going to live. What I've noticed, in almost all these situations, the killer is killed. either by himself or someone else. And when that happens, doesn't that throw everything else out the window? I mean, doesn't that tell you a lot of things, at least that much? That person doesn't care about gun-free zones. That person's intending to die. Whether it's the police or himself or an armed person inside there, that person's going to die. And what about people who are going to kill themselves? Are they normal? Can you really come up with a theory? Can you really draw any conclusions from yesterday? Can you really think it through enough that you come up with a better way to live, a better way to be secure, when you factor in somebody who isn't playing by the rules anyway? Doesn't it all sort of depend on rules? Doesn't it all sort of depend on expected behavior from people? How many callers today and how many people yesterday were on the news saying, well, he must have known this. If he was going to do this, he was going to do that. You know, he chose this for a certain... He's going to kill himself. If the shooter is the person they think it is, he killed himself. We all try and figure out, and everybody speculates on how the end game could have been different. Why not consider this? Just one time consider whether there was no way to prevent this, whether this is just a senseless act of insanity by an insane person. And the only reason I say he's insane is because I think you have to be a little bit to kill yourself. A commitment to end your own life is not consistent with rational thought, in my view. Now, it may be rational under certain circumstances, if you're terminally ill or something, that's different. But when you're 42 years old and you drive a car and you don't park in a handicapped spot and you are physically able to function, and you make a decision to bring weapons into a public place and kill as many people as you can, as quickly as you can, and take your own life, it's easy to exploit that when that happens. But I'm not sure you'll ever prevent it. And the game in the media is telling you that had you only listened to them, you might have been able to. It's a fraud. It is a vicious, cruel fraud. Did he have a gun permit? What's the difference? If he legally had a handgun, or two, then it was perfectly legal for him to purchase the weapons he used to kill 12 people. Is that an argument in favor of gun control? And what if he didn't have a permit? Then gun control doesn't matter, because he purchased the guns illegally. And if he had the guns illegally, then what? What does that tell us? Nothing. Somebody committed a 2 crime on his way to a 10. Yesterday was not about gun-free zones. Yesterday was about a madman. And I mean that in the literal sense. Whatever he was mad about, he was mad enough to do what he did. I doubt he checked the map. I doubt he determined whether it was a gun-free zone. I don't know. I'll concede that. but I don't think this had much to do with gun laws or the economy. You know why it's on national television? Because it's rare. There's 300+ million people in this country. Yesterday, one of them snapped. I don't know what broader lesson can be drawn from yesterday. What lesson there is to be learned. I submit that at this point there are no lessons to be learned, because there are no facts to learn them from. The only things I feel like I know for sure from yesterday are that the police were there almost instantly. Our police chief is incredibly competent. And the networks are going to use us and forget us in about a week, having gotten what they wanted out of our tragedy yesterday. There's one more call. I'm going to try and get to it. Obviously, I did not get Kathy White on here for the announcements, and for that I apologize. Try and get this on. Joe, you there?
Yes, I am. Again, every morning I'll tell you a great show. But listen, here's what I like to say. Like you said, half of the information is sketchy. You don't know what. But a lot of people need to think about this, like you were saying with gun laws. If this man, they said, if he was, let's say, an immigrant and he couldn't speak English, if he couldn't speak English, how could he register to get a gun? You know, a legal gun. So just to say, if he couldn't speak English that good and he was having all those type of problems, it just goes to show how easy it is to get a gun in any of the 50 states. Just not the state of New York, but any of the 50 states. A lot of people talk about, you know, having guns registered. But I believe there's just as many people running around here with illegal guns than there is with legal. That's it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. But again, my point is to wait. Let's find out what happened before we exploit what happened yesterday to support or oppose gun laws, the economy, whatever. The only thing people should have drawn from yesterday, in my opinion, the only thing they know for sure is that some people were murdered. That's it. And out of respect for life and out of respect for Binghamton, there should be some quiet. Let the facts come out. Then make your proclamations about how right you've always been and how much you could have, had you only been listened to, you could have prevented this. Leave us alone till then. We'll be back next week.